to Thrive in 25. This is week 1 in the mental wellness segment of the journey, of the challenge. So my name's Tom Busch. I am one of the partners at Thrive Fitness Plus, and I have an absolute passion for coaching. And some people are like, well, what is life coaching? And I've seen some examples of it before. When someone once mentioned I needed coaching, I did not respond very maturely. And I was like, I don't need some motivational coach telling me what I should and shouldn't do and getting me fired up to get motivated. So is that a version of life coaching? Well, probably. But let me tell a story, and it may help clarify what I do and what I'm passionate about. So I came home the other day and I had my shoulder bag on and my laptop was in there. Pulled my laptop out and it was hot. And I was like, oh my goodness, this thing is like cooking on fire type. And then I was wondering to myself, is like, what's making that thing run hot? And I'm not a big IT guy, but basically there's code inside this computer that says, hey, this is how you're supposed to run. When it opens, you should do this. When you're closed, you should do this. But something in the coding that day got all messed up. And based on how the code was making the machine run, it got really hot. And I would say dangerously hot. And so these computers run on these, these symbols and letters and numbers. And as these symbols and letters and numbers run, the computer is supposed to help cool itself and help know when to turn off and when to run. So it's run on coding. And our brains basically run on beliefs. Yep, the most powerful thing you own are your beliefs. Because out of your beliefs flow all of your actions. And I know when I first heard this, I was like, I don't know about that. I don't think that's true. But then I kept thinking about it, and I've come to land in this place where, yes, I am in agreement that beliefs are the most important thing I have, because out of my beliefs flow all my actions. Some of the arguments I used to tell myself were, well, I'm not really big into drinking, and I'm not a big fan of being drunk. But then I found myself on vacation, and there's this restaurant that's in walking distance, and the Bud Lights were like $1.75. And you know what? After a night of fishing and being in Florida, I found myself walking back to the cabin. Yeah, not quite the straightest line. And so what happened? Did I act outside of my beliefs, or was something deeper happening? And so what I believe was happening was, well, I have this belief, this high level belief that says, yeah, I'm not a big fan of drinking. But I have this subset of beliefs that says, but if I'm on vacation and the beers are cheap and I can walk back, maybe it's okay. So I didn't operate outside of my beliefs. What I didn't realize is I had all these other beliefs in there, these sub beliefs that are actually running the show. So beliefs are the most powerful thing that you have. There's this thing called cognitive behavioral therapy, and I'm not a therapist, but I definitely walk into this realm of helping people explore what do they really believe about things. Because here's the thing, 90% of all of our beliefs are either subconscious or unconscious beliefs, which means most people have an understanding of what they believe to about 10% of their beliefs. So that means 90% of the code that's running the show of their life, they don't even know. And so when I started learning this, it was back in 2013, I started recognizing all these areas where it's like, oh, I didn't even know I believed that. For example, my coach once asked me, at the time I was running trophy awards and I was president of the company. We had about 40 employees. And my coach asked me, Tom, it doesn't seem like you affirm very much. I was like, what do you mean? Well, I don't hear you affirm people very much, and I'm trying to understand why. And I started going into this thing about, well, I never got a lot of affirmation growing up. I just think it's kind of unnecessary. And besides, if I affirm people too much, then they won't do what I want. And as I heard myself say that, I was like, that's kind of ugly. So for me to control other people, I would withhold affirmation. And so when is it ever right or good or just or loving to withhold affirmation? Well, I would say never. I never want to withhold love from people. Now, love may have different looks to it, but I never want to withhold love. So I had lived the first 44 years of my life basically withholding affirmation from people. And so that was one of those beliefs that I had that I didn't even know I had. But when I discovered that belief, then my life started changing. The way I affirm people started changing. And it's still a journey. I'm not perfect. Not even close. And so the belief that I had was driving the behavior. And I didn't know that I had that belief. So I never looked to validate the belief or question the belief or bring it into alignment with what I believe to be true. And so what am I as a life coach? Well, some coaches would say, well, Tom, here's what I want you to do. I want you to have a notebook, and I want you to make a little check mark every time you affirm someone. And I want you to affirm someone 10 times a day. And what would happen, I believe, is I would do that for about 2 weeks, and then it would fade off, and I would probably not do it again. Why? Because I never changed the belief. The belief is driving the action. But if I don't change the belief, the actions won't change. And that is what I'm passionate about in life coaching. I help people discover what the beliefs are that are driving their behavior. I help people question what their beliefs are so that they can say, I don't want to believe that anymore. I want to be free of that. And then I say, great, let's chart a path to freedom. And let's move away from this belief that's been holding you back and limiting you from loving yourself or loving others. So I love helping people get to know who they really are and to get to know what the coding is that's driving their system. And in relationship coaching, which is something I'm very passionate about, then we have two individuals with two different codes running. And guess what? Your code doesn't look like my code. And what happens when your coding doesn't look like my code? Well, there's conflict. And so the way I used to do conflict was, well, my way is right. You should believe like I believe. And guess what my wife said? No, that didn't go over very well. But that was the way we did conflict. And the difference now is it's a journey to explore the other person's belief. Hey, what do you really believe about that? When did you start believing that way? How has that been brought into your life, and how do you see it manifesting in your life? And when the other person feels like they're understood and they're valued, then we can start talking about, well, here's how I was brought up, and this is what I believe about this. How can we together make an agreement on how to chart a path forward? Something that we can both get behind. So in relationship coaching, I love helping bridge gaps of division. So there's always this force, just like gravity, that's trying to divide people. It's trying to divide us in our business cultures. It's trying to divide us in our families. And in some cases, it's trying to divide myself from who I am. So in other words, there can be an internal division as well. So let me wrap this up. Week 1. What I want you to really focus on is, what do I believe about food? So over the next 5-6 days, when you're eating something really healthy, I want you to stop and go, what do I believe about what I'm eating and why I'm eating? And if you're in a bad place and you're eating barbecue chips and a fried chicken sandwich, ask yourself, what did I believe that made me choose this thing? And what I really think will start to clarify is, what are the beliefs that are driving the behavior? And in food, there's lots of different ways that we can look at this. But until we recognize the belief, we won't change our actions, at least not sustainably. I want to end with a quote, and it's by Carl Jung. He's sort of known as the founder of American psychology. And he said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, but you will call it fate. So until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. In other words, until you bring these beliefs up into your consciousness and you inspect them and say, do I really want to believe this? Does this align to who I really am born to be? That these beliefs, if you don't inspect them, they're still going to run your life. And when you end up in the ditch, you're going to say, it's just fate. I have bad luck. People don't like me. I'm cursed or whatever. And really what's happening is, hey, I got this coding and I haven't inspected the coding. So this week, inspect your coding, especially around food. And I think the one challenge I would add on to this is when you're feeling conflict with another person, stop and ask yourself, what do I believe about this situation? What do I believe about this person? And again, that will be on the relational component, and that may again help me to understand, what do I believe about what's happening here. And what you'll probably find is something like, she thinks I'm stupid. She doesn't think I'm any good. She doesn't think I worked hard enough today. And then we have a belief we can start looking at and inspecting, and a whole better life awaits on the other side of those who inspect their beliefs. Because until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Hey, week 1, next week, you will see more visuals as we dig a little deeper. Have a great one. We'll see you next week.